hello, hello. We are live. We are live. Happy Friday. I hope everyone is having a nice week. I hope everyone is having a nice Friday. I am Lauren with Me Too Many Voices, and I am going to get joined up here with Sydney and Kelly. Oh, and I remember I made a fun graphic to get ready while I get connected, so bear with me. Go ahead and get comfortable. All right, hopefully technology will be our friend today. All right, Sydney, let's grab Kelly. Excellent. I think technology is going to work. I love it when a plan comes together. Excellent. Yay. Thank you everyone for joining. I am Lauren with Me Too Many Voices, and this is part of the MTMV and Friends for the Community by the Community series. I am super excited and honored to be joined by the incredible Sydney Rae Chin and Kelly Kay, who is providing access for us. Sydney works to empower Pan-Asian non-cis men survivors to reclaim their wholeness and sensuality. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I love her page. I love her energy. I'm just super excited to be talking to Sydney today and learning, quite frankly. It's something that I'm still trying to reclaim myself. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I am really honored to be here and just like we've been talking about collaborating for a long time, so I'm happy this has finally happened and that like the universe has made this aligned.
I agree. And someone wrote, not just survivors, but strong supporters and thrives. Absolutely. Like I mentioned, we are going to be talking about reclaiming your sensuality after sexual assault. Just because of the nature of the conversation, anything that may come up, I'll go ahead and put up a content and trigger warning just in case. But we want to create a safe space. Feel free to ask any questions. Use the comment box as you see fit. Ask any questions and we'll try to get to them. Let's dive in. Reclaiming your sensuality after sexual assault. That seems almost like a feat impossible.
Yeah, for me it's still been a process. Like I'm 3 years from my assaults and I'm still trying to like find ways to reclaim my sensuality, and like stuff still does come up, at least for me, within 3 years that I've been recovering and like really doing healing work. I think a lot of it, at least for me, has to do with my sobriety as well. After my assaults, I misused alcohol, and now that's something that helps me like reclaim myself and reclaim my body, because like when I've chosen to become sober, it really made me realize, oh, my body feels so much different than when I was drinking alcohol and like partying. I mean, I still like to party, just without the alcohol. And I think being able to understand what my body feels good with, even though it may not be the popular thing, especially being a 24-year-old, that's really helped me reclaim my wholeness and sensuality. And I'm glad that I'm also talking about this because it's Pride Month, and also a lot of events during Pride Month are like super focused on like alcohol and drinking, and it's kind of tough this month because like I want to like hang out with all these cool people and do things, but a lot of these spaces are not sober and are centered around alcohol, which is definitely harder, at least during this month when I do want to celebrate.
No, thank you for sharing that. Truthfully, it's not something that I thought about with most of the Pride events and celebrations, that there is a tend to have a kind of a through line with alcohol in the party scene, and having a sober space. I see other people wrote sobriety is huge for me too. I fully agree with that. Struggling with sobriety since my most recent assault in December. Thank you for making the connection for people. So it's definitely clearly resonating with many.
Yeah. And I think that like amongst the people that I've talked to and also like friends and some like clients as well, like that's also been a through line that I've noticed where people misuse other alcohol or other types of drugs, but I feel like it's not really talked about within survivorship spaces. I guess because there's like stigma around it just generally in society.
I wish there wasn't, because truthfully, not always, but addiction can often be a symptom of something else. It can be the symptom of trauma or something else that's going on. You know, trying to escape, to feel anything, to feel in control, even though, again, a lot of these things are not the long term healthy answers. But understandably, why many of us do end up there.
Yeah. Also, something else that has helped me reclaim myself and like my body and especially my sensuality has been boudoir photography. It's really let me see myself in wholeness and also be seen in a way that's super vulnerable, which again, I recognize, acknowledge that it's super scary, and also acknowledge that it's a huge investment because some of these shoots go from like anywhere from like $300 to like thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Um, and I think it's helped me like reclaim my energy and like make me realize that, oh, this is my body and I'm allowed to reclaim it in a way that maybe, I guess, how generally like society would maybe like see it as like, oh, this is taboo or something. And really, I think that boudoir is an art, and I think that it's a human art form, and that's why I love it, and that's why I've like gifted myself a boudoir shoot every year.
I love that. And I want to ask you about some tips on that. Someone did also ask, can you define the word sensuality? What does sensuality mean to you? That's a good question.
That is such a good question. To me, it means and connects more like energetically and spiritually, personally. I think sensuality is deeper than like body and like adornments, but it's more so again like on a spiritual energetic level that like you're in touch with your whole self and your body and that connection.
I like the idea of that connection, that wholeness, togetherness. Um, I also, I was curious about that myself, and I actually looked it up right before this live. And according to the dictionary, it's the enjoyment, expression, or pursuit of physical, especially sexual pleasure. Um, but I think that this doesn't always have to be sexual.
Yeah, I think that it can be like just pleasure in general, and I don't think pleasure necessarily, like pleasure could be like eating your favorite meal or like making your favorite meal. Like I think that's pleasurable.
Um, what other tips do you have for survivors or anybody who's trying to find that engagement, that connection with those different parts, reclaim their sensuality, reclaim their voice?
I think something that's helped me and that I've seen help other people as well is journaling and also manifestation as well. And like journaling about how you'll see yourself in 6 months. Because, like, I think personally as a survivor, sometimes you like, at least in my experience, I've gotten in that loophole of like, oh shit, there's all this trauma and I'm just replaying the trauma over and over. And so allowing myself to just dream and journal about like, this is where I want to be in 6 months, or this is where I'll be in 6 months, I think is super, super powerful. And then also just reflecting on myself as well and journaling about like, what's something that I'm proud of, or like, how have I grown in 3 to 6 months? Like, where have I been? And then also boundary work. I think boundary work is not often talked about in our like society, especially in the States, but also it's not talked about like generally across the board. And I think figuring out what your boundaries are and what that means to you, and what that looks like is super, super helpful, at least in my experience. And then in the workshops that I've done with consent and boundaries beyond sex, people really find a lot of empowerment because we're only taught about boundaries within sexual situations, but it goes beyond that. And I think it deepens so many relationships in our life.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I could not agree more. You know, I think boundaries are being able to set boundaries, and it's not easy, but getting in that habit is an act of self-love. Um, Absolutely. Um, I liked how when we spoke, you talked about, you know, really writing out what those boundaries mean to you, or what does consent mean to you. Can you elaborate more on that part?
Yeah, so something that I ask people who are in my workshops are like, what do boundaries mean to you? And I know it's a really open-ended question, but I think it's good to start there because boundaries mean so many different things to different people. And also, like, what does consent mean to you? Because I think that a lot of people have grown up with different, like, um, I guess, knowledge or like different ideas around consent that are not necessarily the same, especially if you're someone who is part of a community of color like me. I didn't really know about boundaries growing up. And also, like, I was always taught as a kid that, like, oh, you're supposed to hug your uncle and aunt, but there was no consent in those interactions. And there was no, like, what's my autonomy? So I think really understanding that for yourself, and also looking at your family like history, and also like looking at what you learned from your parents about consent and boundaries can be really helpful to like journal about that in particular.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. A couple of people wrote same here. We also had another question. What if the pleasure and sensuality never come back like it was before?
Personally, I think that it won't be the same as before. I mean, because trauma alters our brains. I personally have PTSD, so I know that everything has been different since then, but I think that it'll come back in a different way that it, like, you don't expect it to come back in necessarily that way. And it's like more of, I guess, being on that journey and like going with the flow, as hard as that seems. And I know that's hard, and I'm gonna acknowledge that's hard as well, because it's taken me time to like not necessarily like try to be the person that I was before my assault, because that's never gonna happen.
No, unfortunately, we can't really put that shit back in the bottle, but we can build a different ship. Maybe I shouldn't start a analogy if I can't finish it, but and I really like the word reclaim, because it's like taking it back. It's growing. It's the idea of reclamation. You know, taking something and turning new life into it. And so I think that really plays into, yeah, it may not be the same, but it doesn't mean that you can't find that purpose and those avenues again. And
Yeah.
um, we got a whole bunch of comments coming in. I also wanted to ask, I know I was really fascinated when you were talking about ritual baths.
Oh, right. Yeah. So something that I like to do that brings me pleasure and just like brings me so much joy and so many good feelings is doing a ritual bath. So there's like new moons and the other type of moon that I'm forgetting right now, but I know that we just had an eclipse moon or something like that. Yesterday, I believe. Yeah, because there were like new moon meetings or something. And I usually, not always, when I have the most energy and when I feel called to it, I'll take a bath with like these awesome, awesome bath bombs from this company called Firma Arte. They're an indigenous owned company, and they have these really awesome like bath bombs that are like ritual infused, and it's just, they're so powerful. And so I'll set an intention with them. So like for example, there's one called the Road Opener, and my intention that I set with that, I think, when was that? 2 months ago? It was like 2 or 3 months ago. It was a long time ago. Um, I like called in new opportunities, also like called in my ancestors as well, which I think is really especially powerful for um, community or for people who belong to communities of color. I think that's really powerful to call in your ancestors who have passed because I found a lot of clarity. So like it's just like you get to relax and then also you get to set an intention. Um, and it's just really beautiful. I don't know. I just love it. And I recommend it to anyone who can and has access to like a bathtub.
Um, I am not much of a bath person in general, but I like the idea of being able to set an intention and literally sitting with that and almost letting it wash over you, that intent. Someone's asking the name of that shop. Do you mind repeating the name?
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments too. But they have an IG.
No,
Firma
perfect.
Arte. I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but they're indigenous and queer. They're an indigenous queer owned business, and their products are amazing. I'm just gonna keep riffing about their products.
They should be like paying you for promo. Like, um, would you consider a ritual bath like a pleasure practice?
Yeah, I would consider it a pleasure practice. And I think that it's one that maybe people don't normally think of pleasure practices, but I think that it is totally a pleasure practice to take a ritual bath or to take a bath in general, because like you're really slowing yourself down, and especially in a world that's so fast paced, I think that it's great when we get to intentionally sit ourselves down and to just be with ourselves.
Yeah. Um, what are other pleasure practices, or what is a pleasure practice? I guess let's backtrack a little bit.
For me, it's something that makes me feel happy and excited. And also it just makes me also feel sensual and reclaim that part of like that energy. Um, so I think that a pleasure practice has to do with like more so the energy that you're, what's it called? Words. Words are not a thing right now. But I think for me, it more has to do with like, what's the energy that's happening and how are you well, not reclaiming. How are you like bringing yourself joy and bringing yourself abundance, whatever that looks like to you? And for me, one of the pleasure practices that I love doing is dancing, to just like dancing in my room by myself, putting on some makeup, maybe some lingerie, and just like dancing out to like Beyonce or Lizzo or something.
Dancing around. I'm wondering if anybody else here wants to chime in, if they have any pleasure practices that they feel comfortable sharing. Um, I am really into hoop dance, like hula hooping. I really like to hoop dance. Um, I do not hoop enough. And it's something I've actually been thinking about a lot lately, is that I don't feel like I have a lot of joy in my life. And one of the things I added to my list to try to kind of reclaim that joy is hooping. So I wonder if that would be, I guess, maybe a pleasure practice.
I think that would be a pleasure practice because it brings you joy and like you enjoy it. Also, something that I thought about is that I love taking myself out on dates. Like, I don't think people within our society do that enough. So like now that things are like reopening, I mean, I'm cautious, so I'm gonna probably only do outdoor dining, but like happy hour for oysters or something like that, for like shuckabuck oysters or something else that brings, or sushi. Like those are my two favorite things to eat. So taking myself out on that kind of date, or just taking myself out to the park after I have my allergy meds. But because allergy season is bad this year.
Oh, I know. I'm all itchy.
So I think taking myself out on a date is also like a super awesome pleasure practice. And I think like everyone should do that, because why not date yourself? Because you're awesome.
Yeah. And I think that that's, take yourself for a walk, take yourself out. I think that reminding yourself and connecting with things that you like, not that are not necessarily like a sexual, sensual thing, but it can be hard to even identify things that bring you pleasure sometimes. So maybe it's even just going to the ice cream shop and trying different ice creams. Which flavor of ice cream do I like? And practicing, identifying, okay, like, okay, this ice cream is good. I don't prefer this kind of ice cream. Practice putting some language uh, behind likes and exploring, starting with smaller things. Just it can be really hard when it does come to sex and intimacy.
Definitely.
Someone wrote in running when it's almost time for sunsets. That's my pleasure. That's awesome. I wish that I could say that I ran for pleasure, but I almost specifically have a I do not run rule. uh, Someone wrote dating yourself is a really good idea. Oh, what do you think about this? Is pleasure practice the same thing as self-care?
There's a comment below that I agree with, and I think that it can be for some people. I think that self-care is also a lot about boundaries as well, and I think boundaries is self-care, but I think capitalism has also sold us this idea of what self-care is. It's like bubble baths and like rainbows and stuff, but I'm like, no, self-care is literally crying at 3 p.m. and feeling whatever emotions you need to feel like on a random day in the month. I think that's also self-care, but I also think that like taking yourself out on a date can also be self-care, just that there are different types of self-cares.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I would say that like going to the doctor, brushing your teeth is self-care. Do I get pleasure out of going to the doctor or brushing my teeth?
Nope.
Eh, not really. Um, but I feel like that would be a cool Venn diagram almost to talk about the difference. Maybe we should do a collaboration on that.
That would be great.
Great question. Speaking of questions, because I'm looking at the time, I'm just so immersed in the conversation. I want to make sure that we have time to try to chat about everything. So we also have a couple of questions from people who I posed in my stories if anybody had any questions. Someone had any tips or thoughts on how to stay present, speaking, I guess in a more intimate setting, to stay present, because unfortunately I think all too well a lot of us know how being in an intimate setting can bring us back to our trauma, whether we wanted to or not.
Right. I think that like feeling grounded beforehand helps a lot, and grounding yourself, whether that's in meditation or just taking time for yourself before you engage with your partner. I think that's helped me a lot in particular. Um, I'm trying to think about what else that I've like used.
And if anybody has any tips that work for them, put them in the comments. It's all about learning from each other, trying different things that might work for you.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can think of, but I'm sure other people would have. Oh, taking breaks. I agree with the person who said that.
Absolutely. And I think that hopefully that you would feel comfortable to, even if you don't want to give an explanation, because you don't necessarily owe anybody an explanation, but just say, yeah, let's cool off for a minute. I need to take some time, taking breaks, and it's okay. Also, just a reminder that you don't have to go through with it. You don't owe somebody something because maybe you were in the mood. And then maybe some, flashbacks or just intrusive thoughts, memories, come in. You're allowed to take a break. You're also allowed to just cold stop it, say, no, not today. Thank you. And then, yes, think safety plan with partner beforehand as well for check-ins. Talk to your partner. If it is somebody that you feel comfortable with, and hopefully you do, because again, I say this, we all have various types of intimacy or intimate partners, but if you are, I guess, having issues staying present or, having your trauma coming back, hopefully your partner is somebody who you can talk to about these things and explain what you don't have to overshare. You don't owe anybody anything, but, setting boundaries, having the communicating needs. If this happens, I might be, disassociating, like, let's check in and let's stop. Part of your partner, they should be caring about your safety and well-being. It's not just on you. I feel like I went off on a big tangent there. Apologies.
No, I agree with all of it. I'm like, oh, that's all the things in my brain that I wanted to say, but my brain forgot.
And then another great comment, also in line with dating yourself. Masturbation has felt safer sometimes in reconnecting with my body sexually and figuring out what I like. Absolutely. Get to know what you like on your own, explore yourself, date yourself. What else are you thinking over there, Sydney?
I forgot what I was going to say. I was just looking at the next question and I'm like, ooh, what am I thinking about that question?
Someone else had asked, and this kind of goes along with the last question or the previous question, how to come out of a flashback while having sex, and also if the partner doesn't notice.
I think telling your partner if you're comfortable and also like taking a break. And I think that breaks can be really, really powerful. At least when I was like in very, very early healing, I had an ex-partner, or now ex-partner, and I had a flashback and we just stopped everything, and I just remember being cared for by them and just like really having my needs met. And I think that is super helpful. Obviously, everyone deals with flashbacks differently, so like what works for me might not work for someone else. Also, someone made a really great comment about how sex isn't only penetrative or oral, and I think that's super important to add.
Absolutely. I know we are getting, there's so many good questions. I'm loving this conversation. I would love to continue on with maybe another collaboration or something. But as we do get to the end, I'm wondering, any other thoughts, tips, things that have worked, don't work, words of wisdom?
I think also something that people don't really also talk about after assaults, that you grieve a part of yourself. And over the last 3 years, I've really been grieving my old self. And I think having grief practices like writing letters to your older self really helps, or like writing letters to the people who hurt you if you're comfortable. Um, and just like telling them what you would want to say to them, but not sending it or anything, and just like printing it or like writing it and then ripping it up. And then if you have a lighter or something or access to fire, like putting it in a bonfire. Seeing ashes is really, I think, powerful. And I think grief can be powerful, honestly.
And we need to grieve in order to heal. I've really been, every time I start to say the word heal, I like feel it in my throat, because the word heal, I feel like it's almost just been co-opted, and it just, heal means like you just wake up one day and everything is just completely different, like you've crossed this finish line. And I've just really been feeling like almost like rejection of this word healing as of late. But uh, you need grieving in order to heal, in order to recover from trauma. I love letters to yourself, love letters to your past self, love letters to yourself. You know, that's another great way. But grieving, allow yourself to grieve. It's lonely and depressing and really, really hard, but you're not weak, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. The fact that you need to grieve, you know,
Yeah.
what you've lost.
Oh, someone made a really good comment about how they hate when healing is used synonymously with forgiveness. And I hate that too. I'm just like, no, that doesn't mean that you have to forgive people. Like, you can heal. But then again, healing has been just like twisted by capitalism, which I also hate. I'm like, no, you don't need to like be shooting rainbows and butterflies out of your head or something to heal. Like, it's not. Also, I hate the idea that recovery is this like destination. Like, I super, super do not like that idea. I could go on a rant about it. Because recovery is not like a one-time event. It's also just like healing from trauma is not linear. I feel like I find something new every 5 months in my journey of whenever I think that I'm like okay, I'm like, oh, there's something else that I need to work on and work through. And I think that more people need to hear that, because that's something that I also wish that I heard early on, that like, oh, you don't have to like forgive and forget about it. Like, you can just like, you can have it as like a distant memory, but it still can come up sometimes. And that like, there's no finish line for recovery. It's just like a lifelong thing. And I'm always going to be dealing with the trauma of sexual violence for the rest of my life, and intimate partner violence for the rest of my life. And it's going to come up in different ways, but it will be like this distant like cousin that you don't see as much anymore.
Here's to that. I think that is a lovely note for us to wind things down on. Thank you, Sydney, for being here and, you know, leading such an important, powerful conversation. I'm grateful for your voice, and I'm glad we've gotten to know each other a bit.
Same. I'm like so happy that this finally worked out after like months of having it trying to happen. Also, if people want to look for grief practices and pleasure practices, I have 2 reels on Instagram. Also, I think I have a guide of reels, so just look through all those reels, because I have different like tips for finding therapy, because I know that finding a therapist is tough, especially like in the beginning. I remember it was so tough. and other things that I cannot think of right now. Oh, affirmations, because everyone needs those.
Um, that is great. That actually leads me to one of my next questions, which was going to be, you know, we all loved getting to know you here. How would we find you? How would we follow up?
So you can follow my IG, which will also be linked here. And then in my bio, I'm trying to like not be on IG as much just because it drains me with the algorithm and everything, especially as a sexuality professional. So subscribe to my email list. That's the best way to be able to figure out what I'm doing. And also, if you are interested in breaking up with breakups, I have a little Google form in my link in bio at the top of my links for market research. So if any of y'all are interested in that, just click the link and fill out the form because I would love to hear your input because my friend and I are co-creating a course soon.
Wait, you're co-creating a what?
A course. So we're
Oh, course.
co-creating a
Oh, copy.
course around
Awesome. Oh, cool.
breaking up with breakups because I just don't like the narrative behind breakups in our society.
Um, well, I look forward to hearing more about that course and all that you are up to. I know that sometimes these conversations can stir things up. So I was thinking maybe it would be nice for a moment for us to just, you know, do a little grounding, a little affirmation. If it feels safe, anyone who knows me, I like to shake it out a bit. Let's shake it out. Get some of this energy out. Woo! Woo! All right. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have a affirmation or a safety statement that you would like to end with today?
I am whole even in recovery.
Oh, let's say that with some intention. I like that. Everyone, if it feels safe, maybe put a hand on your heart. Give yourself some body contact when you're ready.
Oh, okay. I am whole even in recovery.
I am whole even in recovery. I am whole even in recovery. That's really powerful. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our Friday. I hope that you have a nice, safe weekend. Thank you, Kelly, so much for providing access and doing it with such style and grace, as always. Grateful for you. In case these things, it did stir more things up, I also have a slide of resources that I'll share on the screen in case you wanted to reach out to a hotline. You can always reach out to me at Me Too Many Voices. Again, I am Lauren with Me Too Many Voices, also known as the MTMV Community Support Network. And this was part of the MTMV and Friends for the Community by the Community series. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say goodbye to these lovely ladies so then I can share the resources on the screen. Thank you all so much.